I'm chasing you.
It's St George's Day and I've arrived in Leicester, a city held up as a shining example of multiculturalism at its best.
I love the city in Leicester because of the friendly people. We got so many people, Muslim, Hindu and Sikh in it, so we become one community.
Good clean city.
How's Leicester compared to Zimbabwe?
Leicester's good, but the weather's bad.
If you look around, you'll see like everybody just mixed up.
What's the secret?
I think our education system helped in the first place. I myself was a headmaster, and I had every faith imaginable there. And we all worked together. We had the same aims in life, and the cultures mingled together.
Local politics is a bit more heated. Until very recently, the constituency of Leicester South was a very safe Labour seat. But in 2004, the Lib Dems snatched it in a by-election dominated by Iraq. 10 months later, Labour won it back, but now the Lib Dems are once again the favourites.
In 2004, there was a by-election in which you stood, and the Liberal Democrats won. Why did that happen?
Oh, Iraq, in a word. It didn't matter my own personal views, because I'd been very bitterly opposed to the Iraq War. I would just think it was a criminal mistake, and I said so at the time, both publicly and on marches and so on. Don't blame the Lib Dems for this, but what they did was to use the slogan, here's your chance to send a message to Tony Blair.
Let's face it, up until the Iraq War, Labour almost took it for granted that the minority vote would be delivered largely to them.
10 months later, of course, after having had the experience of a Lib Dem MP who, frankly, had very low visibility and was very ineffective, I think people decided that it wasn't about sending a message, it was about sending a messenger. And I like to think I've done that effectively for the last 5 years.
The constituency has now had an experience of Sir Peter Salisbury for 5 years, a Labour MP that many people are disappointed with. There's the national economic crisis that nobody can deny that, who's in government. Well, it's a Labour Party in government.
We're in the middle of the alleged Great Yellow Revolution and the Clegg Bounce and all that. Do you fear that this time?
Well, you've got to look at what the Lib Dems are like locally, and actually they are split and divided all over the place. At the last City Council elections, they went from being a major force on the council down to just a handful of members. They are desperately divided here in Leicester.
On what sort of issues?
Well, actually on personality issues, on the personality of my Lib Dem opponent, actually.
That's real utter nonsense coming from Sir Peter. We've been together at hustings meetings in the constituency in the build-up to this election, and he keeps reiterating the point that he is a very close friend of the Muslim communities, and that's being divisive. We're here to represent all the constituency, and yet, just on that very point, at one time that he could have demonstrated his understanding of these communities was when we were talking about extending the period of detention without trial to 42 days, and of course Sir Peter voted for it.
Do you think his record on civil liberties isn't quite as proud and stuff as he says it is?
His record is awful.
As a Labour MP, I've been able to speak out in Parliament on these issues, voted consistently for an inquiry into the Iraq War, and indeed voted on a number of other issues that I think more than just irritated my whips, actually quite annoyed them. For example, I was one of the MPs who rebelled on the 90-day detention issue.
This government, deservedly, has a reputation for being draconian. If you look at things like control orders, weakening the principle of trial by jury, its alleged complicity in torture. They're really big fundamental issues. You've got a record of voting against them on some of those issues. I guess people would ask, why have you stuck with the Labour Party when there is that break between you and them on really such important things?
Because the Labour government has so much that it can be proud of in terms of the minimum wage, in terms of the investment in public services, the health service. The hospitals here in Leicester have been dramatically transformed by Labour.
Is that a tough position, though? Because I wonder sometimes that civil liberties are so fundamental, are the basis of a civilised society. So to say, well, never mind that, schools and hospitals have done okay. I'm saying I can't go to that part of the argument yet before I've got these absolute fundamentals of a civilised society sorted out.
I explained to you earlier. The people in Leicester South, like people elsewhere, obviously have a range of issues when they decide how to cast their vote.
Solomon, How do you do? Nice to meet you.
Hi, come in.
Do you think he's won all the Muslim support back, or are things more things are complicated now, much more complicated than they were 10, 15 years ago?
Far more complicated, and I don't think it'll be an easy ride for Peter as well. I can see the movement and the sentiments of the people moving more towards also the Lib Dem and also the Conservative Party.
Really?
The early stages was the time when the Muslim community, the migrant community came here for economic reasons, and hence they supported the labour market. But over years, as they have been successful in commerce, in industry, in the professional education, medicine, etc., the status quo has changed. And I do not think the Labour Party should take it for granted that that particular support will be there for many years to come. My children think differently totally to what I think.
Explain that.
Well, their idea of politics is somewhat different to mine. So I could not traditionally, how we used to have it within a traditional Asian family, is the parents had some sort of bearing on the career of the child, which way to vote. Now they have a mind of their own, and hence I think there'll be major differences in this forthcoming election as to how the next generation will vote.
At the mosque on Evington Road, there's plenty of evidence of the shifting concerns of young British Asian voters.
What are your kind of big issues politically? What's important?
Well, as a student, mainly, I just want to get rid of student fees.
Right.
That's all I'm worried about, and I think the Lib Dems are promising that they'll reduce student fees or they'll get rid of student fees.
Right.
So hopefully they follow through with it and they win.
It's about time that certain people are held accountable for their actions.
Who are you talking about?
I mean, the last 13 years, and I mean the Conservatives before them as well.
In what kind of areas do you want them to be held to account? What policies are...
Obviously, the one that's on everyone's lips is going to be expenses.
Anything else on your radar, so to speak?
No, just with the roadworks and stuff as well, because we're damaging our cars every day with these potholes, so it don't seem like Labour want to do anything about it. So.
Because your parents' generation, by and large, was quite loyal to the Labour Party.
Yeah, it was. And I think after a while, they probably got too complacent being in power for that long, and certain things, their ideology just went down the pan.
What was the break point then, do you think?
I think the war had a big impact. Yeah, that had a really big impact, and the sort of stance they had against that really changed a lot of people's minds.
The Lib Dems, you mean?
Yeah. When you compare it with Obama, he knows we've got a certain date. We're pulling everyone out. The troops are coming home, but I don't think Gordon Brown really has a clue. He's not listening to the people. British public have had enough. They want people to come back home.
I think with the Asian community, they seem to follow the others as well. You know, so one says vote Labour, so fair enough. They ain't got a big inkling on who to vote for, so that's okay. I'll vote Labour as well.
Do you think your generation perhaps is more likely to look at politics and see who's got the best policies than your parents' generation did?
Because I've wanted to look at these sort of debates, but I know there's more of a sort of brainwash sort of thing. Trying to get you into what they want you to think. So I'm just going to go with my gut feeling. To be honest, my parents asked me as well, who to vote for. And, I'm just going to guide them towards Conservatives and see what
it's working the other way around now. You're giving your parents advice. That's interesting. Are they listening?
Well, my mum would listen, yeah. She's definitely going to sort of do what I would say. But
sounds like your dad might not vote Tory, then.
I'm not so sure.
In Leicester South, issues are really crashing into each other. People here talk about Afghanistan, but they're also concerned about potholes in the road. And as younger generations move into the electorate in 5, 10, 15 years' time, everything here could be up for grabs. Yes, the Lib Dems have got a foothold, but that doesn't seem like the start of any big sea change. And look at all these small businesses. There's no reason why in the future this shouldn't be natural Tory territory. When people talk about Labour's natural supporters being much less predictable than they used to be, they usually mean the white working class. But that applies just as much to the many communities here.